Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am senior editor of Overland Journal and Expedition Portal, Ashley Giordano, and today I'm doing a podcast in the field in the beautiful Cascade Mountains of Washington, and I'm joined by Courtney and Andrew of Tsavo Touring. Thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting us. We're just so excited.
Yay! Yeah, you guys have been long-term listeners of the podcast, so
Since
it's kind
day
of
one.
Since day one.
Yeah.
And you've
Very
listened
first.
to,
All
did you
of
say
them.
all of them?
All of them.
That's impressive. So
And now our
super
son's
fun.
oddly listening through all of them again. He's 4.5. So.
That's awesome.
And special thanks to Equipped for supporting today's podcast. More than 15 years ago, Equipped Expedition Outfitters became the first American company to import the best-in-breed vehicle expedition equipment from across the globe. Since their humble beginnings, they have risen to become a go-to leader within the adventure travel industry, continuing to deliver a diverse portfolio of reliable, long-lasting products backed by unparalleled customer service. From shelter solutions from Easy On to portable fridges from National Luna to aluminum storage boxes from Alubox, their ever-growing selection of best-in-class gear increases your capability, comfort, and confidence during any adventure. Visit equippedone.com to gear up.
He listens to it before bed every night.
What's your
Like,
son's name?
John.
John.
John listens
Okay.
to it every night, and he likes to say that it's that
Relaxing?
Scott has a very relaxing voice.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So we're actually sitting in your van. So do you want to tell me and us about?
So the van we bought new in 2016, and we were originally going to start out with a business that did kind of like a mail order, almost like it's an adventure wagon kit that's in it now. And it's basically the same idea. We were going to set it up so you could ship a pallet somewhere, build a van. But that kind of didn't work out. So we decided to keep it because we liked it. And then, what was it? 2 years ago? Or a year and a half ago, we built it out to where it is now. We were planning to go to Europe and kind of cruise around to Eastern Europe. But we've kind of changed course, so this is going to sit and wait for us while we're down in South America for a little bit.
Nice.
And then we'll come back, get it, and then hopefully ship it over to probably Germany, I think.
It was a adventure wagon kit when he did the build.
Nice.
And he did it in about, you said, like about a week or so.
That was great.
Nice. Nice and quick.
I did not help at all. I was a really good... I guess we have to kind of figure out, because I would have John, and John would want to help. And then, like, I'd have to help. Like, if John wanted to come in, then I'd have to... Andrew be like, oh, like, can you come get him? And so we had to do a lot of, like, mixing. But for the most, Andrew did just about all of it. So.
Nice. And what's the make and model?
It's a 2016 Mercedes Sprinter 4x4, and it's the 170-inch wheelbase, so it's the longish, not the longest, but the longer one.
Nice. Yeah, it feels really spacious in here.
Oh, I know, it's so huge.
It's very big.
It's really, really nice when it's parked. Has a few little quirks when it's not parked, but overall we really like it.
Nice. What were the pros and cons of this build or this setup that you've experienced?
Probably like one of the big comfort issues that we've kind of encountered, mostly before we had the insulation and the linings package put in, is it would get really hot. It was kind of like a toaster oven in here. So that was a big one. It's not quite. I mean, everybody sees like the Mercedes star on the front, and they think it's quiet and luxurious. It's a FedEx van at the end of the day, so it drives like a FedEx van. It's kind of loud, but we like it. It's a little quirky, but we enjoy it.
We try and keep it out of, like, we don't like using it in the summer. For the reasons he said. Like, it gets really hot, and then it retains its heat for a long period of time. So then, like, even though we don't have air conditioning in it, because we didn't feel like we needed it, we have 2 fans up top, one on the front, one on the back. And I feel like when you run the fan, it, like, helps it for sure, but it's definitely... like, we took it to Colorado recently, and it was probably like 85 degrees or 80 degrees, and it was very hot in here. And I would say by, like, 2 or 3 in the morning, it finally felt how we wanted it. And then our son, like, sleeps on a little mat in front of our seats. And he wants to sleep in, like, a sleeping bag. Like a 25-degree sleeping bag, and it's like 85 degrees in the night. And he likes to get all in and cozy and then I have to like wait for him to fall asleep, and he's just like dripping sweat. I have to like open up the sleeping bag and like
pull him out,
pull him out, and like he just gets so sweaty, but he loves it. He wants to like get cozy and get like.
He likes of all the vehicles we've traveled in, I think the van's his favorite because he can play on the floor with, he has Hot Wheels and Lego and stuff like that. So he gets down there and he's like, I miss the van.
No.
Well, actually, after we'd not been in it for a while, he goes, "Oh, it's so good to be home."
Oh,
Which was really funny because we had been in our Jeep for so long,
right.
and he, after being in the rooftop tent, not having like the indoor space, he really enjoys. Like he mostly plays on our fridge or on our alley boxes with his cars and his Lego and things like that. But he likes it the best for sure.
Sweet.
So
Nice. Well, I know that you guys had vehicles before this one, and so let's go back in time, get our time machine and go back in time and go to the beginning, because everybody has their own story or their own TSN turning point, that happened that led them to a life on the road. So take me back to the origin.
The origin story.
Your origin story.
So like the original origin thing was probably back in the mid-90s. I saw the Turtle 4, I believe it was, in a magazine.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's people that drive around the world in 4x4s. I was like, sign me up. But then as I became an adult, I was like, oh, that's going to have to wait till, when I'm retired. And we built a life and started.
Retired.
Yeah, like go get jobs, do all that kind of stuff. And then, do you want to talk about the...
Yeah, so...
Okay.
Back in 2000, what would it have
15.
2015, I had like a health scare. So we had lost twins, and I was in the hospital for like a month and a half, like almost lost my life. It was this really big, scary moment. We had just gotten married. Like we had only been married
6 months,
6 months, I want to say. And so it was a big test, one to a relationship, test to like kind of realizing that once I was finally better, it probably took me a solid year to like get back on my feet, and like after like the grieving was done and like all of that. So then after about a year, he took me to Overland Expo West. Was that in 2000? Would have been in
16 or 17.
And I was finally like kind of back, like being active again, like
and
it
happy
took and happy and just trying to get myself. So Andrew was like, "Well, I'm going to take you to Expo West. I'm going to get you out there with people again." And so I walked into an earth roamer. I said, "Oh, I can live in this."
I was like, good luck.
Yeah. and so then we kind of had said, well, talking about that, like what could we live in that would not be an earth roamer, but that we could afford. And so we started looking at a lot of different options. We both had decided we didn't want to be in a van, actually. We wanted to be in something that was outside so that we wouldn't be forced to stay inside. So we wanted some sort of an outdoor trailer of some kind that would be forced to cook outside and still not feel like you were in a van all the time.
And we weren't 100% sure that we were going to travel long term. We originally were like, okay, let's try this for 6 months, see if we like it. And if we do, then we'll revisit. So the first vehicles that we kind of set out on the road with were kind of more a backstop to if we didn't want to travel, we could still camp. So we had a pickup, and then we had a little off-road trailer that we towed behind it. Mm-hmm. And we figured that if we didn't like it, we'd go buy a house, start our life back over, and then still enjoy camping in the outdoors and everything on the weekends.
Like on the weekend, So we were in a Patriot trailer for 6 months, and it was great. And we loved it. It had its own, like, a lot of positives and negatives to it. It had, like, the setup was easy, but it was kind of a lot of work at the same time. Like, and we would move every day. Like, we didn't tend to stay in one spot for 2 or 3 days, which is, I think, kind of what the Patriot, I felt like, was for. It was, like, a weekend trip. You kind of set it up. You leave it. So we were, like, putting it away every single day for 6 months. And, like, actually, we met, what's his name? The owner of Patriot.
Oh, Justin?
Justin. We met him at Expo West, I think, after we'd had the Patriot. And he was like, "You live in it? Nobody lives in these."
I think there's some people doing it now. And God bless them.
Awesome.
We loved it. But
So he came and like saw us and then talked to us about it a little bit, and it was actually really funny. So we did that for 6 months, and then when we realized how much we loved it, we were like, well, why would we stop?
Yeah. Well, we thought about we were gonna have another kid at the time, so we had John when we left. So 2019, he would have been about.
He was 1.5.
1.5 when we left.
Yeah.
And then we were going to have another one right at about that like 6 to 8 months time that we'd set for ourselves originally, and then that didn't pan out. So we're just like, we still like living on the road. Let's like revisit this. And Courtney's like, I need something that's really warm, a lot of shelter, a lot of space.
I need hard sides if we're gonna do this more. I need a decent heater. I need like a space where we can cook and have like, if the weather is bad, because I think that was what we found at the Patriot is if the weather was really crappy, we'd like make sandwiches really quick, or we would like just do like a quick meal. But I wanted to know that if there was bad weather, we could still cook in it.
So we got a 2019 Ford F350, took the bed off, put a Norwood tray on it, and then on top of that we had a Hawk, 4L Campers Hawk flatbed on it that we cruised around that for 2 years. I think we made 2 or 3 trips back and forth across the country, took it to Canada. What else did we do in it?
What's only international was Canada. Canada.
Lots of miles.
Lots of miles.
Really fast.
Yeah.
We got a lot of miles fast. Because we have like a bad habit. So we've been traveling for, 3.5 years now. And we still can't break that, like that weekend warrior kind of mindset of being like, all right, let's go to this place. Let's go to this place. All right, let's pack up, go home. So we still only stay, 5 days in a spot is really long for us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we did 10 days in Mexico.
Yeah,
that was
in
like
Oaxaca.
unheard. Yeah, in Oaxaca, and it was like unheard of. But normally we're 1 to 3 days. Like if we find a spot we really, really like, and we've gotten better about it. Because like when we went to Colorado recently, we stayed in a spot for 2 days because like this, it was like on a cliff and it was so beautiful. And we're like, so we've gotten better, but it is still the same where we're like, let's get up and let's go and let's drive for a couple hours, and then we'll stop a lot because obviously traveling with a 3.5-year-old, I have to pee, or I'm hungry, or I'm bored, or like, so we stop. We try and keep our driving about 3 hours at the most, depending on if we have to be somewhere at a certain time, or if we're like really trying to like the last couple weeks, I feel like we've driven like long hours to get places, and so we try to avoid that at all costs, and then we try and find camp like maybe around between 3 and 5, so that
at the latest.
Yeah, at the latest. We don't like to drive in the dark if we don't have to. That way John can still have some daylight to play. And then like once you come into winter, sometimes that's not an option because it gets dark so early. So in that point we try and maybe stop around 2 or 3, and so that he still has time to build Lego for a little bit, like kind of just decompress from the drive, and then make dinner, and then maybe like he'll maybe watch a show before bed, or just something to decompress him because
it's kind of like regular house life.
Yeah.
Once we're parked, it turns into like.
But it's moving.
Yeah, it's not like a lot of people, I think, and I've heard it on the podcast before, is that friends, family, people like that, like think this is like a big vacation of every day just being awesome places. But we sleep in Cracker Barrels and like Bass Pro Shops all the time, and we have all the same, or a lot of the same problems, if not more, than we did in a house.
Yeah, you still have to do your laundry, still have to go grocery shopping. But then added on to that is where we're going to sleep.
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
And it used to be when we first started, I would always be so anxious about planning and being like, where are we staying tonight? Like, where are we going? I got to look it up. I got to see where it is. And Andrew, and I don't do it really as much anymore, but it took me, I would say, like a solid year to year and a half.
She's getting awesome, though. Like, Courtney didn't grow up, so I grew up camping, like, all over Montana. Like, that's all we did. We didn't have a ton of money, so we couldn't fly anywhere. So when I met Courtney, she was,
lied?
Yeah, so she goes, I was like, what do you like to do? And she goes, camping? And I was like, oh.
Question mark?
Yeah, I was like, where do you camp? And she goes, the Gorge. And I was like, you mean like the Dave Matthews concert venue in Eastern Washington? And she's like, yeah.
In my Subaru. So when we first met, I had kind of just lied a little and just said, oh, I love to camp. And then when he heard like where I like to camp, he was like, it's not camping. It's not really camping.
But it was strategic on your part.
It was because I wanted to become outdoorsy. I wanted to learn to like to be outside and like to camp because my family didn't do it growing up. And so then he took me on one of our first backpacking trips through the Olympic right?
Yeah, it was
Like
up in the
mountains.
Olympic Peninsula. We call it. I think we did like a 10-mile hike into the forest and camped, and then I think we stayed 2 days and then came back out.
What was
And-
your reaction when?
Oh, and she's like a liar?
Yeah.
I don't know. I liked her a lot, so obviously it worked out, but...
And then what about when you guys did your first camping trip together? What was your reaction to that?
Was that the
We
hike? Or was
Yeah,
that
when we
the...
hiked up to
He's like, do you want to go backpacking? And I was like, not really. But can't we just camp in a car? Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, because right before I met, I still camped out of vehicles and stuff, like I always have, but I was on a big, backpacking, light mountaineering kick.
Yeah.
So I was like, come on, let's, go climb some stuff, and she's like, uh-oh.
And it was, far. And I was like, my feet hurt. It was just a terrible experience. I hated it. And so, but then when we got there, it was amazing. It was so pretty. It was the really great spot. And then when we came back down, I just was like, I like to hike. I really enjoy it. But I don't think that backpacking is for me personally. I don't think it's something that I'm interested in. And so I'm glad I tried it. We'll never do it again. And it was only 10 miles. It wasn't even that far, in the grand scheme of things. But I didn't think it was 10 miles. I thought it was only 5 miles.
Yeah, but fast forward, maybe 3 years when we were getting married, our honeymoon was actually us driving our Land Cruiser at the time with a roof tent from Arizona back to Seattle, because we got married down in Arizona. So she took to it pretty quick.
Nice. What kind of Land Cruiser did
It
you
was
have?
a 2002 100 series with I think it had a CVT rooftop tent on it.
It did. It had a CVT rooftop tent. And we still have it, actually.
Yeah.
And
so we'll never get rid of that thing.
No, I've been trying to I was trying to get him to exchange it for a troopy or something, but he's not interested in that. So.
I take a troopy.
We would all take a troopy. But yeah. I'm curious why you guys chose overlanding. You kind of alluded to it a little bit.
I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know it was a thing.
Vehicle-based travel.
Yeah.
Why did you pick that avenue or that route?
I guess I'm probably responsible for that because I had that stuck in my head from, I think I must have been a sophomore in high school. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to do this someday. And I actually, when I was in high school, I got a 86 Jeep Cherokee to salvage. And anytime that I wasn't working or doing whatever on the weekends, I would just go drive around the forest and camp and all that stuff. So it kind of started early, playing around with the idea. But I think I was the one that kind of brought it to her attention.
I think we just wanted to travel. I didn't really care how we did it. I just, I think when we first started in the Patriot, it was just simple fun, state parks, and because he eased me in, okay, if we're going to be living in this. I was really scared about being in the wild, out, camping. I'm like, what was that? Did you hear that? It really freaked me out. So he eased me in, make sure we were in state parks, make sure I like to be near people, and then as we kind of ventured out of the Patriot and went into the 4-wheel camper, I think that I felt more comfortable, and then I liked being out on BLM land and out in the, because then you start realizing I don't really like being near people because I don't trust people.
Trust people.
I don't trust people. What if they're I don't know if they're messing with our stuff. I don't like being in a big state park because you just don't know. I'd rather be out in the middle of nowhere where nobody is around now.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting. This weekend we were at the Northwest Overland Rally in Plain, and I heard more than one person say, my wife, I would love her to come along with me, but she isn't comfortable camping, or she would like more comfort when I'm camping or whatever. So was easing her in the way that worked out, and she, the more experience you got, Courtney, the more comfortable you felt, or I don't know, is there advice or anything
probably
that you could give?
I didn't realize it at the time because I was easing her in, just to kind of try to be kind and sympathetic and get her out there. But now that we see other couples going out, one of the flaws that I really screwed up probably a few times in my life was that I wouldn't necessarily make the trip for her. I would be bringing her along on my trip.
Oh,
and so
yeah.
we're really intentional now, even with John, is that everybody has to be enjoying themselves. So we take John to museums, and we take him to things like even if it was a weekend trip, we'd want to take him to something that he wants to do, or he loves being around kids, so we would want to take him somewhere that would give him a piece of this. Because it's his trip, it's her trip, it's my trip, so we all have to be happy and kind of all compromise and make sure that we're doing it. So
A lot of stopping.
What were some things that made it your trip as well, Courtney?
Food-based, mostly. Like, look at this little cafe. Like, this looks really nice. I love to eat. And so I love to find places that have good food. And so when he's driving, I'm, like, always on my phone. And I'm, like, on Yelp. Or I'm on, like, any sort of, like, this place could be good. This has, like, 10,000 reviews. I like
Courtney
cities.
grew up, like, around Seattle. So that was, like, a big one, too. I mean, I like cities, too. But so going to cities and kind of...
Exploring, like, new towns and exploring new cultures and new people is huge on my list. Like, I love interacting with people. And I love, like, getting to know, like, places that they like. And, like, really, like, kind of getting... So, like, when we were in Mexico, we did Baja and interior Mexico. And when we got into, like, mainland Mexico, I don't know. We've been calling it interior Mexico now. But, like... going into like Oaxaca, we stayed at this little town called Santa Maria del Tule, which is this beautiful, cute, adorable town, and we were there for 10 days, the longest we probably stayed in any spot. So I really had gotten to know like the people that lived in the town, and I got to know where the fruit and vegetable stands were and where the cheese stands were, and I got to figure out like because we cooked a lot, and so I think that. Because I love to cook so much, I'm constantly looking for great little vegetable stands and what can I make here? Because when we were in our Jeep, we just had like a backpacking stove. Like we didn't have anything big. And so we got really creative on the kind of things we'd make. Like we'd make like caprese salads, or maybe we would make like wraps or things like that. And so I think that that's probably a big part of my travel.
Yeah. John's not here, so I can kind of speak to him. He loves kids. Like, he will chase kids down. He's like, "Oh, there's some friends over there. Like, I'm gonna go find these kids."
Or it'll be dead quiet, and you'll hear a kid laugh. He'll be like, "Did you hear that?" Like,
but yeah, he makes tons of friends, and that's like the other one of the kind of like switching topics a lot here. But one of the big things that we really like is that we lived in Central Oregon, and so it was pretty homogenous in terms of culture and everything like that. And so him traveling around, he's got to like hang out with all these kids from different parts of the United States, like all kinds of like socioeconomic conditions and all that kind of stuff. And he doesn't care. He's like, "Hey, let's be friends," and then goes off and plays. So that's really cool to see, because I mean, I definitely didn't have that growing up.
When you guys were in Mexico, what was it like seeing John interacting with the local kids or the other kids that were on the road, speaking in Spanish, speaking in English?
John got really frustrated in Mexico because he loves to talk, like to the point where it's almost sometimes mentally exhausting because he would get frustrated because they would speak English, and a lot of times they did.
It didn't take too long. He kind of like broke through that, and like the international language of play kind of took over, so he'd be running around with them and playing. He actually, one of the funny ones is when we were in Mexico, we met this German family that was on a sabbatical or something like that, and they were playing, and they had a 7-year-old boy, and the mom spoke English, and she said, "I heard our children interacting and playing, and he was telling him, he's trying to teach him English, and he said if you want to say hi, or no, if you want to say hello, say hi, and if you want to say goodbye, you wave your hand."
Like this.
But so he had a blast. It's just so good for him. And I think he picked up a lot. Like, we were approached by some people, and they kind of said, like, "I think he understands some Spanish. Like, do you guys speak Spanish?" We're like, "Oh, not really." But, like, in 4 months, I think he picked up quite a bit, so.
My brother got married in San Jose del Cabo, and so the hotel that we had been staying at the time, because we had to find a babysitter during, like, 2 of the events. And I asked her, "Do you speak Spanish?" And she said, "Yes." I go, "Do you speak, like, is your English?" Because John obviously doesn't speak Spanish. Like, he needs to be able to speak to you in English. And I go, if you don't mind, if you just speak to him in Spanish. And I'm just curious to see what he knows. And she was with him for like 4 or 5 hours probably. Mm-hmm. And I came back and I asked her, I go, "Oh, so how did he do?" She goes, I spoke Spanish the whole time, and I think he understood about maybe like 60 to 70 of what I was saying. I would say, like, "Go wear your pajamas," or "Where's your toothbrush?" or "Where do you sleep?" And he just would show me. Yeah. And I think it's...
We also, like, immersed him forcefully kind of in the car. We always said we weren't going to be the parents that did screen time and stuff, but that kind of fades away pretty quickly when you have a kid. But so we made the deal with him that he could, I think, watch like 30 minutes a day of just TV on his iPad. Anything else had to be in Spanish. And then we'd do like maybe a half an hour to an hour of that. So I think he might have picked some stuff up off of there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just depends because when we would have like really long drives, like I think the longest we did was 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We'd kind of extend that a little bit. Be like, oh, and I could be on the iPad for like an hour or two. You can do like, because he has all his books are on there. He has his homeschool stuff is on there. And then he has like shows he can watch. So sometimes it'd be like you can watch it for an hour and then after that you have to watch it in Spanish. And he doesn't get super frustrated with it, but I think he kind of gets exhausted from it a little bit where he's like, I don't really want to listen to this in Spanish anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked him, I go, do you understand? Oh, because he'd said, Dad, doesn't vamos mean go?
Yeah, vamonos. Let's go.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the shows he watched are like, vamonos! So I think he picked up a lot more than we thought he did.
Yeah.
And I think, and that was only 4 months in Mexico. So when we do South America for the 2 years, it's going to be like, I think it's going to be amazing. I think he's going to pick it up really quickly. So.
Okay.
This week's episode is supported in part by iCamper. They make innovative hard shell and soft-sided roof tents that are designed to survive long-term overland use. Their revolutionary X-Cover won the Overland Journal Editor's Choice Award, eliminating the bulky PVC cover and also allowing for the fitment of crossbars for carrying bikes and kayaks. Their SkyCamp Mini is another award-winning design that provides a hard shell tent in the footprint of a much smaller clamshell model. This is the perfect solution for smaller vehicles or on vehicles where rack space is dedicated to other systems. iCamper believes that the best times are those spent traveling, discovering the world with those you love most. You can find out more about their quality tents at iCamper.com.
I imagine for a lot of parents, the idea of hitting the road and traveling full-time in a vehicle with a youngster might be overwhelming. I don't know, I can't speak to that, but I imagine it would be just like educating and whatever, all the things that it involves. If somebody's looking to do that, what's your advice?
To just pick up and travel full-time with your family?
Yeah.
For us, we did it when John was young.
Yeah, so we kind of we eased him in as well. Like we would
But
take
we
him out
knew
quite a
this
bit.
way he wouldn't be in school yet. So we could kind of just like do whatever with him and it'd be easy. I was a teacher for 12 years. So I said, I could homeschool him. Like I could probably figure it out. I was a Montessori teacher, so I can't do it the way that I was trained, but I could do it differently. So I would highly recommend that for families that really want to do it, like just sit down and do like quick weekend trips to see how you enjoy it first, to see if anyone, like maybe your kids don't even like camping. Like maybe it's not going to be enjoyable for everybody. So do it like weekend or do it like for a week. Maybe they're all spring break or something. Go do it for a week. See how the family does. Like what does everybody want to do? It's not just about, like we said earlier, it's not just about me. It's not just about Andrew. But it's about like what does John want to see? He loves museums. So normally when we're driving, we're like, we've been driving for 2 hours. There's a museum, like we're going into Denver. Like there's this cool museum here. Let's stop. Let's make lunch. Let's go take him to a museum. And now let's go find a place to camp. Like maybe if we're in a big city, we'll do like a harvest host or something and stay at like one of those wineries or breweries, something that's in the city. Walmarts are almost always in cities, so you can do a quick. He was obsessed with Cracker Barrel. Like
he always wants to see, he's like, can we stay at a Cracker Barrel tonight?
I want French toast.
Like, all right, whatever.
And so I would think that would be like a good one. I also would say that let your kids help plan. If you have older kids, be like, what do you guys want to see? Do you guys want to do more like hikes? Do you guys want to do more like city, like restaurants? Like I have a friend that lives in Dallas that her daughter like loves going out to dinner. Like she's a huge foodie. She's like 12 or something. So they're helping them, like taking a big map out and letting them help you plan it. We haven't been able to do that with John. Sometimes Andrew will say, like, where do you want to go? He's like, I want to go to the zoo. And we're like, oh.
Or he'll be like, I want to go to South America. And we're like, that's not yet.
Yeah. He calls it Afro-America for a really long time. I think he was, I don't know, do you have any?
I don't know. I think it's just like the big thing is to just make sure that everybody's needs are being met and that you're not pushing people. Like, you're not pushing time, you're not pushing agendas. Like, you're out there just traveling around and seeing the stuff that you guys want to see. Like, not trying to live up to something that you might have seen on social media or that you know, like, it's not all, like I said earlier, it's not all, you know, like beautiful campsites and all that kind of stuff. And it's not just camping. I mean, if it was camping, we would have been done a long time ago. We would have never.
There's a lot of meltdowns. There's a lot of frustrations. But there's also a lot of excitement, a lot of happiness, a lot of like, so like if we stop for 2 months, sometimes we'll like, because we're getting ready for this big trip right now. And so we've been spending a lot of time with family in the like Seattle area and family in the Utah, like Salt Lake area. And so it's been really nice, but now we're both like kind of chomping at the bit to like get back on the road because it's been. Although I have actually really been loving the showers every day. Those have been really nice. Like and like being able to do laundry without being like, oh, okay, where's the closest laundromat? And although I think I was telling you actually that I love doing laundry. I think it is very relaxing. I love looking for laundromats. I think it's like, I always like to find like fun, quirky laundromats that have like a cafe next to it, or a lot of the laundromats are in like strip malls, and I seem to believe that strip mall food is the best. I think if you can find like a good Thai place in a strip mall, it's always really, really good. And so we always try and find laundromats and that have like cool stuff around it. So if you don't have to, or we'll sit, like when we had our camper, we popped the top in the camper and John would like do some homeschool work, and Andrew might try and get a little work done, and I might like read or something like that. And so, but I think so I enjoy doing laundry a lot, actually. It's kind of weird.
That's good.
Andrew's like,
it works out really well for me.
Well, he did a trip in Onyx recently, and he's like, I had to do my own laundry. And it was weird because I didn't go on the trip with him, and so it was going, like, I think it's at a hotel, you know, sometimes if you stay at those hotels they have the laundry, and you have to like go up the stairs, down the stairs, up the stairs down to get to your laundry, and like set a timer, and like it's so
you guys were talking about how you were talking about not believing what you see on social media in terms of like everything's wonderful all the time. Was there a specific instance that sticks out in your head about a time where what hit the fan?
I don't know. That's kind of a tough question.
Like we were like fought, or like it was just a stressful situation.
Yeah, I guess we, on social media you kind of see the wonderful water.
Oh, wait.
They're like, oh yeah, I got a few actually now. But you see beautiful waterfalls, and you see #van life, and you see troopies with beautiful backgrounds and things like that. But people get sick, or fight, or you seem to have some.
I'm
things.
ready.
Okay, ready.
So we were driving through Nevada on our way to, I think, to California or something, and we were driving through the desert. Maybe we were like 5 miles out of town, and I started smelling diesel, and I was like, did I get diesel like on my feet? Like, what's going on? I was like, there's something wrong, and we're in our like big fancy cool like Instagram ready truck, and I'm like, man, it stinks, and I was like, I better turn around. Because the smell's getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and I'm just.
We thought it's where the road we were on at first.
Yeah,
maybe someone dumped
like,
diesel here.
And so we get back to this boat launch to where I could get out, because it was really not an ideal place to get out and look. So I got to this boat launch, I get out, and there's just like diesel pouring down out of the truck.
Oh.
Yeah, and it has a fuel filter up on top of the engine, and the tech that had done our service didn't tighten it in, so it broke these lines. Fortunately, the tow truck drivers were nice enough to come a little bit out onto the gravel to get us. They took us into town, and they ended up parking us at a Walmart parking lot. And we're like, oh, this will be fine. Like, you guys will fix it tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And so it ended up being, I think we were there for 5 days, waiting for parts. And Winnemucca, nothing against Winnemucca, but like a Walmart parking lot's not like the ideal place to be stuck. And it was cold, and then all of a sudden, like I think day 2, it snowed. It just started pouring snow. So we were stuck in the camper, just chilling out, like not doing anything. We couldn't take John to the park, couldn't do anything like that. So like we were just sitting there,
stuck
and, like,
in the camper for 5 days.
Every 2 hours, she'd be like, "John, let's go into Walmart." And
Go get a toy, like, or pick out a Hot Wheel, or here's get some Legos you can build in the van and the truck, and like, or just get out and walk around because he can hang out in the toy section for hours, just looking.
Like, that was rough. Like, people go through way worse things, but
The one I was thinking of was when we were with some friends camping, coming back. We were coming back from somewhere on our way back to Bend. I can't remember if we were still living in Bend at the time, and I think we must have been in the Patriot because I was changing John's diaper or something.
Oh,
he was little.
That was the first time we tried to leave on a little test trip. We were like doing a dry run on the.
And I was changing John's diaper, and I think Andrew was on the back, like getting a snack while we were stopped, and there was some kind of something going on. Like there was some weird people just kind of hovering around us because we were at a park thinking like, oh, this will be safe, but it was kind of like one of those. It was a park that just had a lot of kind of maybe not so friendly looking people in the area, and so Andrew was like, hey, can you hurry up? Like, so we can get back. I'm like, I'm hurrying. I'm going as fast as I can. And I'm like he's like, and then he got to the point, he's like, literally, like, just get in the van. Like, just get in the car. Like, let's just go. And I'm like, trying to, like, change John's diaper as quickly as possible. And he's moving around. And then I had to, like, get him in the car seat. And Andrew was, like, literally looking at me, like, get in the car. Like, right now. Go. And we got in the car and drove away. And I had seen it, but I wasn't paying attention.
We weren't like profiling people, maybe a little bit, but not totally. But they've been sitting there like staring at our truck and like talking
for a while.
And then they kind of like were getting closer and closer, and then they finally like just started walking across the street, like
towards us.
What did you call it? A kitty corner towards us.
Yeah,
walking across the street, right, like straight at us. And I was like, why are they walking straight towards us?
And like we were by ourselves. I think we had been with friends earlier, and then we had like parted ways with them or something. And it was I think that would have been the only moment that I was like scared, and that was before we were even traveling full time.
As we're sitting here talking about it, they just like keep rolling into my mind. like, oh yeah, like when I got Lyme disease, and that was kind of crappy.
Oh my goodness. But I don't think anyone's ever been like, I got food poisoning once. John got food poisoning once. Yeah, but really, in reality, none of us have really like had that. We don't have like a terrible story of like we were so sick. Like,
or so mad at each other.
We're so mad. We don't really fight. We don't really, like, we bicker. John calls it fight talking.
He's like, stop fight talking.
But, like, we'll bicker and be like, oh, well, like, I don't want to go here. Like, I don't want to be in the car anymore. Normally, if I'm, like, frustrated with Andrew, it's normally, like, I need a shower. Like, it's been 4 days since I've showered. I'm, like, ready to shower, or I'm hungry.
Yes.
Or I do not want to be in the car anymore. Like, we've been in the car for 5 hours. We had a little bit of a longer day than we expected. Let's just find somewhere to camp. I don't care where it is. And John will say that. He'll be like, was this drive longer than you expected? No, actually. It's 10 hours is about what we thought we were going to do today.
How has it changed? You were traveling as a couple before John came along. How has that changed your relationship on the road?
So we didn't travel a whole lot. Like, we went over to Italy and drove around for a few weeks. I think 3 weeks in Italy we drove around. Since we've had the road full time, John's always been around.
He's always been with us. Because we left when he was 1.5.
Yeah.
So when we first decided to be on the road, he was 1.5.
But I think as a family, or just even as a parent, like one of the coolest things to see is that a lot of the stuff we're seeing for the first time, but it's the things that we've seen before that he's experiencing. It's really crazy to see like him trying to sort out like what's going on, or like, like, is that a volcano? He always says, like, is that a volcano? Is that? Were there dinosaurs here a long time ago?
Is there an octopus in there?
Yeah. And so it's cool to sit there and, like, travel around and, like, see stuff through his eyes and, like, just seeing him grow and change. And we're really fortunate to be able to, just to be able to see him every single day, like, making changes. Like, before I used to travel a lot by myself, before we moved to Oregon. And if I would have stayed in that kind of mindset or career, I would have missed so much of his life. So
because he started really working for himself when John was born. I actually remember the day that, like, John was due, like, any day. Oh, I quit my job. Oh, good. I was like,
and what were you doing before, and what are you doing now?
At one point I built I was in the aerospace industry for, I don't know, like 7 years or 8 years. And then before that I worked kind of in healthcare. Like, I wasn't a doctor or anything, but I helped build processes and help people improve programs and implement things. But
and then when we moved to Bend,
I worked a lot of hours, and I would fly to Texas at the aerospace job. I'd fly to Texas once a month for like 7 to 10 days, just like clockwork, over and over and over. And it was great at the time, but
It was the same
stuff
place.
the stuff that we get to see in John and getting to watch him, change and grow every day. It's mind blowing. It's just incredible to.
And we're lucky enough because we've been traveling since he was so young that car rides, like it's
all normal.
It's just used to it. He doesn't care. Recently though, he's been like, I'm bored. Like, are we there yet? Like kind of a recent thing. And but for the most part, like John, we're like, I was like, what is this? Okay, so like, John, we're lucky with John too that he is actually pretty laid back, and he kind of will go with the flow. The kid will sleep anywhere. He doesn't eat almost anything, but like he'll sleep anywhere, and he's super laid back, and he will go anywhere. And I think because we've lived how we've lived, we're lucky to the point where like when he like right now as we were talking, he's with my mom and my sister, and he is having a blast, like eating lots of candy and like going to farmers markets with them. And so he still is getting the life that some people are like, well, don't you wish that he had like a neighborhood where he could play with kids and he could ride his bike and join a soccer team? And I'm like, no, because I don't think he'd like it. I think that he wants to keep traveling.
He loves making he makes these. They're not. I don't know how to explain the bonds that he makes. I'm not probably that articulate, but he makes these bonds with kids. Like over the course of maybe like a week, and he remembers them like months later. Like we were getting on the boat from Mazatlan back to La Paz to Baja this winter, and I was like, "Did you have fun over there?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "But I'm a little bit sad." And I was like, "Oh, what are you sad about?" He's like, "My friend Bodie's still over there." I was like, "What?" He goes, "I want to miss him."
Yeah, so like he makes friendships, and he's almost like a little kind of intense about it, actually.
Yeah.
So it's a hard.
We all are. I think on the road.
Yeah,
it's like a neighborhood, right?
Friendships really fast
Mm-hmm.
and really hardcore, and then you're like, I don't know when I'll see this person again.
Exactly.
So it sounds familiar.
Yeah, but it's cool. Like now that we've traveled a little bit more international, the sense of community is a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
It's like we met all these people in Mexico, either going up the Pan American or down the Pan American or just traveling around Mexico. And like you said, we like build these bonds like really quick, and you kind of make like these lifelong friends, and that's really, I don't know. People kind of, even us, we probably thought like we're gonna be missing all these aspects. We miss our friends, we miss this, we miss our family, but we do. But the people that we've met on the road have just become like really fast friends and.
Well, they become a family because when you dip into that international travel, the pool actually becomes quite a bit smaller of the kind of people that you can be like, you've been like, Ashley, you've been to like South America. Like, what was your favorite part? Like, we know of almost very little people that have been to South America that we can sit and be like, where should we go? Like, let's put out a map and let's like figure out some good places. I just feel like the pool gets a lot smaller, but you think it's bigger.
Well, no, I mean, the sense of community is bigger.
Oh, the sense of community is bigger, yeah.
In the state, like we're in the lower 48 or Canada, you might meet somebody camping or whatever and be like, oh, hey, you're camping. Oh, you're camping. Let's be friends. And then you kind of go your separate ways. But I think there's a really deep connection, like when you're somewhere far from home.
You see a license plate for us, it was like the U.S. or Canada. If we saw a Canadian or U.S. license plate in South America, it was like, ooh, let's run after these people, accost them, and figure out where they're from. And we're like, are we your best friends? It happened so fast.
This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com.
Yeah, what did you guys learn from your trip to Mexico? That was recent.
As we came back in April of this year.
We were there for 4 months, about. And I would say I was really scared to go to Mexico because I did not know what to expect. It was my first, except for Canada, it was like my first dip into international travel. And, you know, you hear people that are like, oh, like, careful, it's really dangerous. And, no, you're going to get sick. And careful what you eat. And be careful where you go. Like, we did not. We loved Mexico so much that we felt the people were super kind. We felt very welcome. The food was phenomenal. We never got sick. Like, we got sick maybe a couple stomach aches once or twice.
That happens here.
But we took probiotics every day, and I think that really helped. Andrew actually has a really sensitive stomach, so for him to take probiotics every day.
Thanks for telling like 10,000 people that.
That's okay.
We also travel with probiotics.
But I think that for someone that in the past gets stomach aches easily, he didn't really have any at all in Mexico. Except for when we stayed at my brother's wedding. And he got sick at a resort. And he got super sick. Right. And it's like, so I think one of the main things I think we learned was like how to spot like good taco stands. You know, you'd say, oh, well, there's all these taco stands here, but everybody seems to be at this taco stand. Let's go over there. Like, or there was one in San Felipe, which is like a little restaurant, and it wasn't even busy, but their food was actually pretty good. Yeah. And we only were like, we need Wi-Fi, we need to like download some stuff for John. I want to download like a book, and like Andrew needs to work a little, and so you would find these places and like, oh, it has really fast Wi-Fi. Overlander is a really good. Good, like they would tell you if like you had RV parks, it'd say, oh, this has fast Wi-Fi,
right,
or like things like that.
I think like one of the things that I really took away from Mexico, I've been in my adult life, I've been around a lot of people from Mexico, so I know that people there are pretty family oriented, but I had no idea how much they loved random kids. You know, just like John would be walking down the street and everybody would be like, hey, hi, look at this kid. Hey, there's this kid. Look how cute he is. And that was so cool to see everybody, you know, just... Well,
he's so blonde, you know, and he's so fair. He's not fair skinned. He's actually quite dark. But
all the kids, like because we'd go to town with kids from the campsites that we'd stay in, and just everybody like goes crazy over kids. It's kind of like if you're in Bend or something, the way people go after dogs. And they're like, oh, your dog's so cute. And they're like, your kid?
Yeah.
But that's so how they were.
Yeah, they just love kids so much. I thought it was so cool for him. Like, to be able to see that.
Oh, little güerito. Yeah. Like, every time they'd see him, they'd, like, touch his head all the time.
We were, like, walking through this market in Oaxaca called, I think it's Mercado de Abastos. And this lady, like, did a double take and saw him, and then she rubbed his head, and she was like, you know, like, hola, said something. I think she said, like, oh, hola, güerito, like, ¿cómo está? And then, as we passed by, she leaned out of her stall, and she started yelling down the aisle that he was coming. And so
everybody know.
Yeah, so all of her friends came out, and they're just so happy and excited to see him, and he's just like, what's going on?
Well, it was like when we saw that mom with a toddler sitting just like on the sidewalk, like eating something, and John passed by, and the mom pointed at John, like was talking to her daughter, like helping her like speak, and she goes, güerito, like when she was like trying to tell him.
And they waved at him.
And they like waved at him. That was so funny.
Yeah, it was just cool, like how welcome, and everybody's so welcoming. Like you did your talk on Saudi last night about how welcoming everybody was to you, and it was just like that. Like, it's kind of sad that the States isn't so much like that. And like we've never had somebody walk up to us and be like, "Oh, hey, come try this. Like, try my restaurant." And we had like that guy in Baja. We met a fisherman, and we sat there, and he didn't speak English, but we speak mediocre Spanish. So we were like trying to like wade our way through a conversation. And we did all right. We were talking to him, and then it was getting darker, and we heard this like rustling in the bushes, and this guy came out, and I was like, "What is that?" I was like, "Oh, it's that guy." It was like he's coming, and he had an armload of firewood
to bring us.
Yeah, and he just like sits it down, and he starts like piling it up, and he makes us a fire.
Oh.
And then he goes to leave, and I was like, "Hey, like, you want a beer? Like, you want to hang out for a bit?" And he's like, "No." I was like, "Oh, come on, like, have a beer."
We had to pay first.
We had a beer.
Yeah.
So we drank a beer with him. And then we kind of like connected more, and like he was having fun and everything. And he finished his beer, and he's like, "All right, well, I have to go back after work. You know, I have to get ready for tomorrow." I'm like, "All right, well, it's fun hanging out with you." And then like 20 minutes or 30 minutes later, we see this flashlight coming down the beach, and I was like, "Oh no, is there something wrong, or like what's going on?" And he came back, and he had like a whole big giant lingcod fillet that he brought us.
He brought us like fresh fish.
Yeah, and we were just like, "Oh, can we pay you for this?" He's like, "I won't accept it." Blah blah. And then the next day, we like we were leaving and everything, and he's just like, goodbye, like have a safe trip. Like it was just so cool. I mean, we see it here in the States, but just not on that scale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, the fish was like already filleted. Like it
was
wasn't.
a beautiful
It
piece
was
of fish.
just like this beautiful piece of fish that we cooked like the next night and made like fish tacos. It was so delicious. But yeah, it was a very heartening experience because in a lot of situations, people might be like, "Oh my gosh, there's a person coming towards us. Like, let's get in our cars because who knows what he's going to do." But in reality, I didn't feel scared at all when he came by. I'm like, oh, maybe he's going to tell us we can't camp here because it was like a big fish camp.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we asked, we're like, oh, can we camp here? And he said, oh, yeah, absolutely. And then like would walk around along the beach. And then as it got darker, that's when he came.
Yeah, that was really cool. I mean, there's tons and tons of stories. I mean, sure. You guys have the same thing. Of just people just out of nowhere, these random acts of kindness. It's just, I don't know, it's so cool. Like that was my favorite part of coming out of Mexico.
Yeah.
So you had the Patriot camper, and you've had the 4-wheel camper and a flatbed, and the Land Cruiser, and a Jeep, and this van.
Jeez.
Which vehicle did you take down to?
No.
Which vehicle did you take down to Mexico?
So it was the 2020 Jeep Gladiator that we found on the lot. That was a really good deal.
Okay.
We were going to try it out, and we ended up. So we had the rooftop tent that we took off of the 4Runner. And we were like, we don't want to invest a ton more money into this thing if we're not going to like it and want to sell it. So we put the rooftop tent on with a canopy, and we drove that down to Mexico. So we lived out of the rooftop tent, but Mexico is perfect for it. I mean, it was so warm and nice, and it was nice to have that because we could go get an Airbnb, every, 2 weeks? No, we didn't even do that. We did like 3 Airbnbs.
We got an Airbnb in
Guadalajara, La Paz, and somewhere else.
That's it. Just those 2. And then we got a hotel in
San Luis Potosí.
And then our friend lived Aguascalientes. We stayed with her.
But yeah, it was really. We ended up really, really liking it. We were kind of like on the fence. We were like, oh, it's pretty small. Like, we don't know if we're gonna like it.
Well, Andrew had said, because we were originally going to take the van, but we didn't really know how much off-roading we were going to do. Like, this off-road's fine, but the Jeep obviously will off-road better. And he had said, oh, well, once we get into Baja, if you don't like, because I was against the Jeep. Because I was kind of like, well, it's like not a lot of space, and what about like bad weather? Because I thought it was going to be like more like crappy weather in Mexico for some reason. And so Andrew's like, well, let's do the northern part of Baja first. If you don't like it, we can come back into San Diego. I can like drop you guys in San Diego, and I'll go back and get the van at the time, which was in Boise, and then we'll swap them out. And then as we kept staying in the Jeep, and we have what's on the Jeep right now is an Easy On rooftop tent, and we like stealth. And we loved it. It was big. It was spacious. And we got down, I think the coldest it got might have been like in the 30s. The coldest we've been in that specific tent is 18 degrees in Texas. But like we were super warm. And it was not an issue at all. And it was big. And I thought for sure that we weren't going to fit in there very well because John's a bigger since the last time we had done it. Mm-hmm. And I think by the end of that trip, we were getting a little tight in there.
So we ended up liking it enough that we decided to switch our time in Europe with our time in South America. We're like, this thing we think it'll be pretty perfect for South America. So came back, got rid of the rooftop tent and the canopy. Then now we just had an Alu-Cab canopy camper put on there. So we have a little bit more stand-up room, a little bit more room to play around, but still be small enough to go get an Airbnb and hopefully park it in a garage or fit under something.
Mm-hmm.
But
we do opposite what most people do. Most people will like start tiny, go a little bigger, go a little bit bigger. We're like, start small, go big, go small again, maybe go big again, and maybe go medium size.
John was trying to get us to do a 4-wheeler, a motorcycle, and a side-by-side.
to live in.
He's like, let's go take a 4x4. He's like, Mom will ride the side-by-side, I will ride the 4-wheeler, and you can ride the motorcycle. I was like, I don't know. Like,
where are we sleeping?
Yeah. But so we landed on the Gladiator now, so that's what we're going to do a little bit of work on, and then probably by the time anybody hears this, we'll hopefully be in South America.
Well, yeah, we should probably be in Uruguay by the time this podcast probably launches.
Nice.
So we'll be
very exciting.
Shipping, like what, end of July?
I don't know.
Ish. And then, but flying into Uruguay probably sometime in the fall.
What plans do you have for the Jeep in terms of any modifications or accessories or
it already has
Build
some
out.
accessories. We have a lot of AEV stuff on it. We really like Dave and Crew's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Good combo.
we have a lot of confidence in it. It goes on the Jeep really well. So we have the bumper, a winch, small, tiny lift. And then we have the Alucab canopy camper on the back. And then I am going to build out the inside, do all the electronical stuff, and any kind of systems. Get that put together, and hopefully it'll hold up for the trip without too many issues or anything.
Our plan is doing, I think we decided on a diesel heater.
Yeah, so I have a diesel heater. Gas or diesel heater.
Yeah, and that's all I care about, is really the heater.
Is the heat.
So, and we took a seat out that he'll probably build like a
Platform in the
platform
back or
for
storage or anything.
So our fridge will go in the back seat next to John, which will actually be kind of nice because if we're driving, I can like reach back and be like, "Hey, John, are you hungry?" Which he's like always hungry. I feel like. And so for the fact that he doesn't eat anything, he's always hungry.
That's why he doesn't eat anything. Cause
Yes. And then that's it.
Yeah,
What
everything
made
else.
you decide to ship to Uruguay instead of driving down the Pan American Highway?
So, for some reason, I got like tunnel vision and fixated on Colombia for a long time. So everything I was doing was built around Colombia, and it was. Then I started going on websites and putting like weather, when the rainy season is, when it's cold, when it's hot, like on all this stuff. And I was like, man, it's going to be really hard to get the Jeep done by the time that, like the rainy season comes in Bolivia, and I've heard bad things. And so I have to get the Jeep done here. And so I was talking to our friend Ernesto, and he's like, whoa, why don't you just go to Uruguay? I was like, I don't know.
It's a great question.
It's a good idea. So that really helped, and then that alleviates any kind of the time crunch and everything because we'll get down there right in the nice weather, nice time of year, and then we can cruise around and enjoy the southern half and see all. I mean, everybody keeps telling us like how big it is, and I mean it's kind of like anywhere, right? Like before we went to Mexico, we were aware that there's a bunch of states and that it was this size, but you kind of think of it as a monolith. Like you think like, oh, we're going to Mexico, and then as you go there, you see like different states, like Sinaloa, like Aguascalientes, like San Luis Potosí and all that stuff. And then you, when you're there, you start realizing the scale and what's where and what it's like. So when we get there, I think we might pop up into Brazil, like just quick trip or something. But
Quick trip to Brazil.
But yeah, everybody's been telling us how great Brazil is. So we might go up there for a bit, turn around, come down through Uruguay, and then down through Chile and Argentina, turn around, come back, up through Central America, through Mexico. And then Courtney was surprised that I said this the other day without talking to her, but we might drive all the way to Alaska.
I was like,
what? To do the whole thing.
Sure.
Like somebody was asking us about it, and I was like, oh yeah, we're going to go to Alaska. And Courtney's like, what?
When did this happen? I thought we were just doing one trip at a time is more my... Well, I should be talking. I'm like, what are we going to put on our Ford now that the 4-wheel camper is gone? So... But
what are you guys like most looking forward to about this South America trip that you have planned?
I think the unknown. Like we have no idea. Like what? We're not big planners. We just kind of go with the flow.
Well, we've planned in the past, and then things change, and it always tends to work out. So I'm just kind of like, I'll have like a really rough plan, but as you go, people will be like, oh, like you need to go check out XYZ, or you need to go try this food. So then we'll make side trips. So hopefully, and it's a pretty well-traveled route, so I think we'll get a lot of pointers from our friends here who have been, and then a lot of pointers as we're moving through the continent.
I'm really excited to like learn the language and really get immersed in the culture. I think that I really want to be a good Spanish-speaking person. Like, I really want to understand it. I really want to speak it. Like, and I think I'm the most excited about that. And the more we interacted with people in Mexico, the more our Spanish got better. So I feel like just after 4 months of being in Mexico, our Spanish got so good. So I can only imagine what 2 years we'll have. That's like, 18 to 24 months is about the time we'll be in that area if we decide to go up through Central America and into Mexico. But it just depends on, because things can always change.
Yes.
You never know, like, if we'll have to, like, go home early. That's why we don't really plan. We're just going to kind of go with the flow for as long as possible.
I'm really looking forward to meeting the cool stories that you can look back on meeting people, like whether they're locals or whether they're fellow travelers. I'm looking forward to all those cool stories that we'll have someday. I hope, like we're like, oh, do you remember that time that we met that guy and he did XYZ?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that like the most.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to also following your trip. It'll be a lot of fun. What is your favorite book?
I knew this one was coming.
This question.
So I was actually talking to someone the other night, and this is more like a professional book, but one of my favorite books is by this guy named Taichi Ono. It's about the Toyota production system. So it's not like a huge turn pager for a lot of people, but in all honesty, it's probably one of the things that shifted my mindset the most in my entire life.
What? Why?
Yeah. I worked in that kind of in that industry and in that space of like continuous improvement, and before that, and then meeting a mentor, and then my sensei from a company called Shingijutsu. It's Toyota's in-house continuous improvement program. Before that, I was like more into like the Lean Six Sigma, kind of like the more complicated. It was like more of the. It was a little bit more complex than Kaizen, and so like my mentor's like, read this book. This will like help you figure out like what we're trying to do here. And I was like, it's not simple, but it's like it makes sense. Like these things actually like make sense to me.
Interesting.
So that book was great. I need to think of a good one.
I don't have like cool overlandy books like some people.
It could be any book.
Like any people on this podcast, like, oh, I did this book about like Africa. This person that traveled to the top of a mountain.
It could be fiction.
I am a fiction reader. I really, really enjoy it. I actually just started. I like Leanne Moriarty, who did like 9 Perfect Strangers, and she did. I think a lot of people know her from. It was not Husband's Secret, but it was Big Little Lies. It was on TV at one point. Yeah, so I've read all of her books. Her books are, she's an Australian author, and she just has these great stories that all have had these crazy twists at the end. And I'm reading Apple Never Falls right now, which is really good about it. It's basically like their mom has gone missing, and they're trying to like figure out. It's like they think it's the dad. It's just kind of like
page turner.
I literally started this book maybe a week ago, and I'm like 80% through it. Like I start her books and I like cannot put them down. And so, and then the other one I just started was the Anthony Bourdain A Cook's Tour.
Oh, that was good.
It is really, really good. And I'm literally on page 4. But so far it's really good.
I also recently, we both started it, and then when I was on this trip in Arizona, I finished the audiobook of it, but it was the Log of the Sea of Cortez, John Steinbeck. And it was cool because we were going to all these places through Baja.
Yeah.
But the big surprise to me was that I was sitting in camp by myself one night, and the book ended. I was like, oh, that's a pretty good book. And then the appendix starts, and it's just a whole nother story. And that story just had me like glued to the speaker. I was just like sitting there listening to the appendix of the book, and I was like, "That was incredible." I mean, I guess that's why Steinbeck, but it was just it was a good book. I gotta recommend that.
What was the one that we read that was the about Hawaii? Oh, it was Hawaii.
That was John Michener.
Okay.
John
Yeah, he really liked that one. John Michener's books are like 800 pages long. Like they're super long, and I think we were listening to the audiobook, and I think it was like 14 hours or 18 hours or something.
We have a friend that's read every Michener book, and he said, I can't remember how he phrased it. He goes, they start, like 1,000 years before the book of Genesis, and they end like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to every episode, and it's been such a pleasure having you on your own episode.
Thank you.
And hopefully one day John will come on his own episode too. That would be really fun.
He wanted to be on this podcast.
Yeah. He's like, did you do the podcast yet?
Yeah.
No, not yet.
I can't wait to hear your voice, Mom.
Woo, yeah.
No, thanks for inviting us.
Yes,
This has been
thank
awesome.
you.
And where can the fine folks of the podcast world find you guys online?
Probably Instagram's the best. We're not super active, but we have a Instagram. It's Tsavo Touring with a T, so TSAVO_touring.
Well, thank you guys again so
Thank
much.
you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure there are lots of families out there that are just very excited and inspired, and
Thank you.
we'll look to you and be inspired by your trip. So thank you so much again.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for listening to the Overland Journal podcast, and we will see you next time.